I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your cattle market summary for the week ending October the 26th, brought to you in part by VitaFerm Gain Smart. VitaFerm Gain Smart is a line of vitamin and mineral supplements formulated specifically for stocker cattle to keep them healthy and gaining. The Gain Smart Stocker program is the best way to naturally reduce pulls and keep cattle eligible for natural value-added programs. VitaFerm Gain Smart, healthy, efficient pounds. Where last week was just what the doctor ordered. We've been waiting for this cash market to really flex its muscle a little bit. The board's been dragging too because your speculators, which are the only ones on the long side, they just need the cash market to prove that some of these bullish fundamentals are true. Need to show that they can get more money out of these packers for the fat cattle, show that this market is in a time of seasonal recovery and gaining some ground in there, and it's just what the doctor ordered. We had a positive way that your guys in the northern plains that had fat cattle to sell, they used a little discipline. They held off from selling too many cattle early in the week and ruining the opportunity to gain some ground. They just kind of held back. All the deliveries that were happening, nearly 200 contracts of those, all that was just working in there, trying to get the board, the basis and everything straightened out a little bit. It was actually a little bit bearish on your contracts, but it was shoring things up the way that the board and the cash market worked together, and ultimately they just held out, knowing that the packers have been sending cattle from the western corn belt way out west to fill some slaughter needs that they have out there on the west coast. They've also been sending them down into the southern plains because your market ready supplies are much tighter there. And so we ended up gaining quite a bit of ground on your fat cattle market, and we continue to see aggressive slaughter. We continue to see great demand for cattle, both import and export. We continue to see a seasonal rise in your box beef cutout values, which we saw a lot of that, but it's all due to just really good demand for beef. And talking about demand for beef, I want to give a shout out to my old friend H. Frank Graves, which those of us that know him affectionately call him Grump. He turned 70 here just recently, and while he was doing that, he was on an abroad trip in Kazakhstan, and not a place that I'm familiar with, but he's working out there in Virginia. He's a long-time employee of the Virginia Department of Agriculture and a big promoter and an ambassador for well, all of U.S. ag products, but specifically Virginia cattle. He's a big promoter of Virginia cattle products and beef. He was out at a joint session of Angus, Kazakhstan, and the Meat Union meeting there, and talking about exporting some live cattle. Had some pictures here of some commercial Angus heifers that they had sent on a boat to Kazakhstan recently, and got those heifers bred and really taken some good genetics overseas. And anytime you take either live cattle or beef products away and sell it, and it promotes what we're doing here, it's a good thing. And he's just one of the cogs in this wagon wheel of beef that we're spreading all over, and there's people out there that are promoting our beef products and the quality that we have here, and we need more of them all the time. But just wanted to mention that. Let's talk about what the board did last week. October live cattle futures on Monday up 55, Tuesday down just 2 cents, Wednesday up $0.50, Thursday up 7 cents, and Friday up 52 cents to end the week with October live cattle futures at 113.87. They have matured. There's a lot of deliveries, like I mentioned, against the board that shored that up. We're back to a positive basis now. And but the board and the deliveries and everything did what they were supposed to do, and that's why there's so much play in that live cattle contract, because there is threat of delivery and the promise that they will come together when they mature. But that 113.87 on October was $1.62 higher for the week. December ended the week at 118.40, up $1.63. October feeder cattle, Monday was up $1, Tuesday down 57, Wednesday down 45, Thursday down 65, and Friday your October feeder cattle went off the board at 154.01, actually down 64 cents for the week. And you'd think that some of that support would have been lent from the live cattle, but the feeder cattle, your spot month was just aligning itself with cash, with the CME Cash Feeder Cattle Index, so it had to get a little bit lower. Selling all those calves was pressuring the market a little bit, but they came together. And then your November was actually stronger, which is what we'll move to now. But 154.80 ending the week of November, and that was up 70 cents for the week. Now, your fat cattle trade. Through Thursday, they'd only sold 8,000 head, all in the northern plains, just haggling around 110 to 112, and some people thought that 112 was a big deal because we hadn't seen that price yet and was a pinch higher, but that wasn't what the market could do. Some dress sales from 174 to 176, but like I said, through Thursday of last week, in the whole 5 area feeding region, but all the trade was in the northern plains, only 8,000 head. Then Friday we come in and we could smell it. We knew it all week long. We were going to get higher, just didn't know how much. We started out Friday early with a little bit of trade at 113 around in some different places, and then it went to 114, and then we went to 115, and that's where we're really established, is at 115, $4 higher than the previous week. Big shot in the arm. And Texas was the main 115. Everything in Texas brought 115. We had Kansas and Nebraska kind of split between 114 and 115. Iowa was at 113. Your dress sales in Nebraska and around that area at 180. That'd be $6 higher than the previous week, but a good strong cash fed cattle market, negotiated trade out of your 5 area feeding region. You ask how did Texas stay at 115? Well, there's not that many negotiated sellers in Texas anymore, and the lion's share of them sell through Consolidated Beef Producers Marketing Co-op there. And you guys that aren't getting what you think you ought to out of these cattle, you're selling off the market, you're always getting the tail end of the market. Get a hold of those guys at CBP. That's here in Canyon, Texas, Consolidated Beef Producers. They can help you market your fat cattle, and it doesn't matter where they're at, especially all around the 5 area feeding region and around the outside of that. They can definitely pool the cattle, and it's better for everybody to get more leverage on this market. Box beef cutout values, your average trade for last week, and they were a lot higher. Choice cuts on the average trade for last week, $211.50, and that was $5.76 higher than the average trade of the previous week. Select cuts $197.90, just about to break $200. That was up $5.46 compared to the same figure the previous week. That's a choice select spread of $13.60. It was a lot wider than that at the tail end of the week, and that just goes to show there's more demand for that higher quality product and the more expensive cuts as we get closer in here to the holiday season, which is right around the corner. But 525 loads of cuts, grinds, and trimmings. That's a pinch off of what we'd really like to see, but still not too bad a movement. Your slaughter, 633,000. That's a good movement. 8,000 more than both last week and last year. But let's talk about your feeder cattle markets. Your real-time index on Cattle Market Central late in the week, 150.94, and that's $3.44 lower than the end of the previous week. And you look at that weighted average, those are from 7 to 899 pound steers all through the 12-state region there on your real-time index, and that average is usually right around 800 pounds, but there's so many of them 7-weight calves that it's all the way down to 787 there. But the calf market, the big push of sheer numbers and volume of calves, especially in the northern plains, especially in South Dakota, western Nebraska, all up in there, Colorado throwing in on that. But just lots and lots of calves hitting the market. And I talked about that earlier in the week, last week, that your genetics are so good. These calves aren't coming to town weighing 4 and 5. They're coming in there weighing 6.5, 7, even up to almost 800 pounds, some of them. And it's just really pressuring the market. Those kind of cattle are not a lot of fun to feed because there's no compensatory gain there. Those calves have never had a bad day their whole life, been heavily supplementally fed, and it's hard for a cattle feeder, to find something that they want to eat better than what they've been eating their whole life. Coupled with mother's milk there, it doesn't get much better than that. And those cattle spend a lot of time pacing, moping, kind of separation anxiety, bawling, walking the fences. They've never been away from home. They're not very worldly. They have a hard time drinking out of a different water tank and eating out of a different trough, and they just don't feed very well. That there's so many of them, they're even hurting the market on the good long-tailed green yearling cattle. The few of them that you have around, they're hurting them because they sell at such a discount. But the yearlings are always going to bring a big premium to those heavy calves, but it's pulling that down a little bit because of the sheer numbers of a movement. But trucks are becoming a big problem, have for the last few weeks up there, especially up in that northern plains region. I talked last week, if somebody has a bull wagon and a pulse, somebody will load you full of calves and send you somewhere with them. And you guys that have trucks, want to work, head to that part of the country, mope around there on a long sail somewhere, and you will find some loads, and you'll get busy in a hurry. But we had the heaviest feeder cattle auction receipts and we've seen in 9 months. So a lot of cattle moving, and by far it's outweighed by calves, and just not a lot of true yearlings, and not a lot of light calves, or weaned light calves for sure. But your cash feeder cattle market in your auctions, $2 to $5 lower, just similar to what that index level was I told you about earlier. The full decline was in the northern plains on those heavy calves. The quality is outstanding. Most of them ranch raised. I mean, you can't find cattle better anywhere else, but everybody's gotten so good at it. There's just so many of them. They've run out of places to send them. The weather was so much better last week. Harvest is moving right along. Your lots are drying out. Everybody's in a good mood. Your health is starting to come around a little bit, but it's just so many of them. It's supply and demand, and when your supplies are that heavy, it's bound to hurt your demand and your market price. But exceptions to that $2 to $5 lower feeder cattle and calf market were true yearlings away from the heavy supplies. Now the true yearlings, the few that were offered there around where all those calves were moving, like I said, they got hurt with their price too, although they were bringing a big premium to what the calf market was. But you had to get some places where they don't have a lot of cattle moving. Eastern Corn Belt, we saw a big price out of Fairview, Illinois there late in the week. You get down in the southern plains, there's not as many calves moving down this way. Some true yearlings there will bring a lot of money, and just get away from those heavy runs. Also Wheaties, some weaned lightweight cattle weighing 4.5 to 5.5 in your southern plains, your hard red winter wheat region there. Those Wheatie type cattle that everybody wants to turn out, they're high where you can find them, but there's just not enough of them weaned and not enough lighter weight cattle to fill demand there. Look at some individual quotes. These calf prices have just come down 2 to 3 weeks ago, you know, a lot of places you could see some cattle pushing or right over 500 pounds, some good steers that would bring $2 a pound. And it wasn't that wild of a quote. You don't see that anymore. You can't get $2 a pound out of a 500-pound steer. Late in the week, Crawford, Nebraska got close as anybody that I saw with this quote here: 53 head, 479-pound steers at $1.99, and that would have been the highest quote late in the week, and really started coming around due to some of the positive push that we saw from your fat cattle trade. On Saturday, we could already see your market turning a little bit from the activities that happened on Friday in Fort Scott, Kansas. And you know, that's an area that's just a commercial market there, guys. But on Saturday in Fort Scott, had 58 steers weighed 860 pounds at 157, and then a lighter bunch of yearlings there, 69 head weighed 781 at 162. And that's a pretty good market on those. That's a look at your week's markets from a home office here in Canyon, Texas. We'll talk to you next week.